everyone. Welcome to this Talks at Google virtual event. My name is Erica Tello, and I'm on the recruiting team here at Google. I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Jedidiah Jenkins. Jedidiah is a travel writer and entrepreneur and began his professional career with the nonprofit Invisible Children. His first book, To Shake the Sleeping Self, became a New York Times bestseller that details his journey cycling from Oregon to Patagonia. Today, he's here to discuss his recent book titled Like Streams to the Ocean, a collection of essays on themes of our lives, including ego, love, family, friendship, and work. Jed, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Talk at Google. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I love talking at Google. Sounds great.
Yes. Yeah. First off, it's so great to reconnect with you. I know we've met quite cosmically over the past few years, so it's really great to reconnect with you.
I know. I feel the same way, and I wish it was in person. Do you guys, I mean, in a non-pandemic environment, do you guys do these in person, or has it been virtual like this for a while?
Yeah. So over the past year, it's all been virtual, but beforehand, we would invite guests to come into offices all over the world. So I definitely wish it was in person, but this is the second best.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you about your latest book because, of course, over the few years that I've followed your writing, I've just been able to resonate my thoughts with the words that you articulate. So for those who haven't read it yet, could you give us a general overview of what this book is about?
So, yes. After I wrote To Shake the Sleeping Self, which was about my bike trip, cycling across America and Latin America down to Patagonia, that was really my entrance into writing. And I was curious if I was good at it. I was curious if people cared. And it was very much the book I wanted to write for my 22-year-old self, which is, for me, when you're a writer, you kind of want an imagined reader, like who is this for? And I was like, well, when I was a 22-year-old gay kid from Tennessee, I didn't know any like adults who were like wrestling with spirituality, with sexuality, with identity in the way that felt like I could read it and understand it. And so I wrote that book to him, to whoever that is. And it's been so cool to see people in the same place I was, or even where I am now, read that book and really connect with it and say, wow, thank you. This is exactly the book I needed. So this book was, okay, well, what's the book I want to read? Like I always want to write a book that I would want to read. If I wouldn't read it, then why would anyone else? And for me, the most life-giving experiences are the conversations about things that matter, and really like sitting amongst my wise friends that I respect and whose minds keep me sharp, sitting with them and talking about what is ego? What does death mean? What does my relationship with my mom mean? What does yours mean? Like, what are we doing here in this strange life, being alive? And it's those conversations that just all of a sudden you look and it's 2 a.m. and you've had a lot of White Claws and you're just deep around the fire, like lost in thought. And I would document those conversations online with my writing online. And people would often say, oh, wow, I wish I had someone like this in my life to talk to. Like my community doesn't talk like this. And so I was like, well, I want to write a book that basically is those conversations for people to have. Maybe either you can spark those conversations in your own community, or if you don't have it, you can just have those conversations with me. Like, read along with me and your mind will just stir with, I mean, anybody, you don't have to be a great writer. If you start talking about what does friendship mean? What does my career really mean? What am I looking for? What is motivating my decisions in life? Once you start unpacking those things, peeling back layers, you can't help but grow and learn about yourself and about life in general. So this book is that. It's the idea that we should be having conversations about things that matter. And this is maybe a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I definitely connect with how you were saying it feels like you're talking with a friend. And I felt personally just like you were challenging your reader to be curious and really understand like the complexities of what it's like to be human. I think what I really admire too is like there's no censoring in your book. Like it's very raw and it's there's just this depth and rawness of your emotion that has made me laugh and cry with the stories that you've shared. One question I had is, as you were kind of writing these stories and weaving them all together, was there any point of rediscovery or anything that you, I guess, learned about yourself as you were putting all of the stories together?
Well, I mean, I am a true extrovert, meaning like writing and speaking is how I think. So when I'm confused about something and just like my life, like things are going on, there's tension, I don't understand something, it's just gray in my head. It's like a storm. And then if I write it down and I try to find the words, all of a sudden I begin to develop some clarity around it. I'm almost like pulling it into focus, and that's what the act of writing is for me. And so the whole book was exactly what you described. It was revelation after revelation of figuring out what I think about something. I mean, one of the big ones was there's a section in this book that is basically like a confession of apology to my brother for bullying him his whole life. And it's in the family section, and I dedicated the book to him. And it was such a difficult thing to do because for whatever reason, like I'm not afraid of saying sorry. I really am not. There's something about family, and especially male family members, like male to male family members, where vulnerability and tenderness, even though I'm like a soft, squishy gay, like I'm down to talk and love and hug but for some reason, if you bring in my brother or my dad or something, there's just a wall there. It's really hard. I can't, hard to go directly at it. So you kind of have to dance around it. And so basically apologizing to him in a book and dedicating a book to him was my like roundabout way of like talking to him, and so that was like a revelation to me of like, wow, it really is, it's a lot of work to grow and be vulnerable and really like step into asking forgiveness.
Yeah, definitely. I connected very much so with your relationship with your brother, and I'm the oldest of 3 daughters, so definitely feel like I probably unnecessarily tormented my siblings and would want to go back and ask for forgiveness and really unpacking that. But I hadn't really thought about that until I read your story about your brother. So I also was going to ask you too about, it seems like a lot of the themes in your book are really anchored on finding your purpose. And I know you had discovered what that purpose was going on your bike trip and talking through some of these momentous stories that are detailed in the book. So how would you point someone in the direction of pursuing their purpose and meaning to their lives after writing this book?
Let me think. There's so much of the way you frame your own life affects your happiness. I mean, there's this thing I say all the time, which is misery is in direct proportion to expectation. So you're only miserable if you expected something other than the reality that currently exists. That's what misery is. Even if you're like slowly being tortured with pain, it's still, you were expecting not to be in pain, and no one likes pain. You're trying to avoid it. So for me, like what's my purpose? Am I supposed to be doing my dream job? Am I supposed to be doing this or that? I think there's a little bit of like a dangerous framing in that, in the sense where we're always feeling like if we're not in that like ecstatic glow of purpose, then we're somehow missing what we're supposed to be doing, which I don't think that's true. I think life is this fascinating, complex yin and yang of learning, of input and output. And input is hard. Input is learning. Input is mistakes. And input is things going wrong and basically the hard won lessons of living, and then output is teaching and making things out of that input, whether it's making physical things or lessons or wisdom to pass down or instructing or building something beautiful, a platform or whatever. And so I think it was Tolstoy who said that everyone in their life, they just want friends, family to work with their hands and to feel useful. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it was this idea of you want to feel useful with your life. Like you want to exist and know that you existing did something positive for somebody, whether it's baking the best cookies on the block or it's like inventing some cool thing or writing a book or whatever it is. You want to feel like you contributed. And that can mean so many things. It doesn't have to be, I don't know, inventing the next solar whatever that saves the world. It can be raising kids that love you and that we're safe, and loving them well. It can be fostering dogs. It can be growing a garden in your backyard. I just think it's just our nature to want to feel useful. And so in your life, creating spaces and environments where you can feel useful, you can feel like you're needed in a space, you fill a need. There is a door with a key and you've got the key, and figuring out what that is. It doesn't have to be huge. A mentor of mine, this guy named Tom Shadyac, he always taught me to beware the idolatry of magnitude, which is being obsessed with changing the world, being obsessed with doing the biggest thing, making the most money. It's like, he was like, millennials are obsessed with the idolatry of magnitude. You think doing something intimate and small is somehow, playing small is somehow not quite right. And he's like, that is just not true. Some people will do really big things and some people will do really important, intimate, small things. And they all have incredible cosmic significance. And so,
yeah.
And
for you being a writer, finding that balance, I guess, between, figuring out, do I want to make, I guess you could do both, but yeah, making a difference in the world and making a difference in someone's life in a small way. I guess, how do you, the question I have is, how do you balance that, tension between that purpose that you have as a writer and that being the work that you do every day? And I think for a lot of us, we can say that our job and our work can be our core identity or the thing that we do day in and day out. But how do you continue to stay passionate about writing, even though it is, your job and something that you do every day?
To be honest, it's simply the feedback loop of, I feel like what I do is useful to me. Like writing, when I write something down and I find clarity of an idea or a story that like gives me that elan, that sense of aha, I feel like I did something for me, for my life. And then if it's good for me, it's probably good for someone else. I don't know who it is. And then I give it to the internet or I put it in a book. And then the feedback loop of strangers responding, saying, oh my gosh, I needed this today. Or, oh my gosh, thank you. I've been struggling with XYZ and this reframed it for me. Thank you. I needed that. And I think that is what we all want, is that feedback of doing something that both feeds you and feeds others. And then you can hear them say it. And I think there's a loss in a lot of modern work where you do all this work and you don't really see if it did anything. And so you don't feel the labor product exchange, labor product gratitude benefit. Like that is like such a natural thing that humans crave. And I think we should all be seeking to encourage each other and really like maximize that feeling, because I get to feel it very much so. And I'm so lucky that I write books in the modern age of social media, because my parents were writers, and very successful in the 70s and 80s. People would buy their books and just, there was no internet. So they would just read them alone. And my parents would be like, I wonder if anyone's reading this book. And then they would get like a royalty check 6 months later with however many books sold. And they'd be shocked because who knows, And I get to see every day somebody reading my book and highlighting something and tagging me in a whatever and showing me their favorite parts. So like I get to feel people reading my book, which is a very new thing for writers. Reading is very private. I mean, you can't really do it except in the privacy of your own mind. And so I feel very lucky that I get that exchange. So all
Yeah.
that, it's not hard to stay inspired. I mean, there's certainly times where writing is hard and laborious and I don't know what I'm saying, but I definitely believe that just putting words on the page, even if they're bad, there's always something in there. Like the work of doing it is like pulling out ideas, and I'll always find something that's worth keeping.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely identify with, I think there's just a magic of holding a book and, really underlining and highlighting and just being able to connect with the writer in that way of like, okay, this is a part that I want to remember and take in. But yeah, I think I really like that you are able to see kind of the fruit of what you do every day and see other people connect with it. For Googlers, we have this opportunity to spend 20% of our time fueling our passions and learning new skill sets. And I think that's a really cool opportunity to, have that outlet to do our core role, but also do, spend 20% of our time in a space that we can learn.
Wow,
So I was
that's
just,
really cool.
yeah, it's a really great opportunity that we have. But for you, I know writing is your full-time role, but is there anything that you spend time outside of writing that really, fuels your passion or a place that you can learn?
Let me think. I mean, the thing about being a writer and especially a memoirist is that like everything I do is input for what I do. So like any experience I have, whether it's a trip, whether it's going home for Christmas, whatever it is very much me learning things about being alive and being a human that may become a story later on. So that I find everything to be investment in my career, even though I don't think of it that way. Um, but I just know that I have to be outside a lot. I have to go outside and sleep under the stars because it's like getting out of your home, getting away from where your phone and the TV work, and sitting surrounded by boulders in the desert or in a canyon or whatever, with 5 to 10 other people. There is a there is a quality to that conversation that you have that is just different. You cannot have it in other places. I don't know what it is. I think it's sort of like the reason destination weddings are always better than local ones. It's because everyone's in the mindset to party. You're like, I can't just go home. I don't have work tomorrow. I like flew here. Let's go big. And that's how I feel with a conversation when you're camping. And so that is like something that I prioritize. It may be 20% of my time, really, experiencing those things because it fuels me.
Yeah. Have you gone on any trips, or I guess what have been your favorite experiences out in nature recently?
Oh gosh, I really this past October. I mean, we've been in lockdown, so I mean, camping luckily is like one of the few safe things anybody can do, and it's my favorite thing, so that worked out well. I also love music festivals, so I really miss that, but that'll come later. I went to the Grand Canyon and camped along the North Rim and drove those like moon buggy, dune buggy things. It was just truly fun. It was 5 days under the stars, so remote. Like it was really, 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 really special with this organization called Wilderness. It's like we made a magazine together called Wilderness Magazine, but it's my friends lead these trips, these guided trips. And there's a chef, you have tent, you get a buggy. There's usually like 15 to 20 people on these trips. You all sleep outside, but you show up and the chef has made you all this. It's very cool.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I got to lead one where people who've read my books or read my first book, because this was before the second one came out, could come and, basically I gave them a copy of my new book and I hosted the trip, and they got to like basically camp with me in the wilderness on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And I want to do this like every year, every other year, because it was a really special way to engage with readers. And I mean, the cool thing is if someone reads your memoir and then wants to pay to go on a trip with you, they probably like you. Like they've downloaded my mind and my whole life story. And if they still want to hang out, that's probably a good sign that they're not going to think I'm a fool. And we had the time of our lives, and just like sitting around the fire, talking, getting to know each other. And I mean, I hadn't like met a new person in 10 months.
Yeah.
I'm very extroverted, so that was really hard for me. And so it was really special just to be outside, having great conversations and driving buggies. That was very soul-filling for sure.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I would love to do that. I definitely miss I definitely miss going out and meeting new people and really connecting with them. I think with the pandemic, it's just been so hard to do that. And in the book, you talk a lot about, being extroverted and identifying with your Enneagram and being a 7. But I'd love to, learn more about what, how you identify with your Enneagram and how you use that to really know yourself, and knowing yourself without, overdoing it. That's easy to do it. Yeah.
But do Googlers like learn about the Enneagram or no? Is it?
I'm not sure. I know a few of my teammates' Enneagrams just from knowing them well, but we don't do that. I would love to bring that to Google.
Well, when I worked at Invisible Children, we would do strengths finders. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Know your strengths. I was like a woo and a includer, blah, blah, blah. And I remember the context around doing that was, it's just nice in a company to have a shared language of like strengths and the way people work. Like it just gives you a vocabulary to help understand either miscommunications or how to maximize a communication or a project. And I love the Enneagram because it's similar. It gives you language. It can be reductive like all personality tests are, but I found it incredibly helpful. For those of you that don't know, it's the numbers 1 through 9, and it's like 9 different personality archetypes. And not only does it tell you what you're like, but it also, for me, the thing that like was really profound is that it explains root motivations based in root fears, foundational things that you're afraid of that actually populate up and basically shape your personality. Which, I mean, this book is all about finding the deeper things pulling the strings of our life, like what's behind the curtain, what's actually making me make these choices. And the Enneagram does that. Like I'm an Enneagram 7, and we're the enthusiast, we're the adventurer, we're always having fun. We'll be like, I'll be on a camping trip and I'm planning the next camping trip. Mm-hmm. So it's like we're just like down to clown. We are down to party.
Yes.
And what the Enneagram taught me that I didn't even know about myself is that my root fear is the avoidance of pain. I fear pain and I fear restriction, being held down. And every number is different. Like, what is it? The 3s are achievers. I'm sure there's a lot of Googlers who are 3s, and their fear is failure, or maybe it's oblivion. Anyway, it's like so interesting because it's not like sometimes if you read an astrology sign or something, you read that and you're like, I could be all of these. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. It feels like someone just made it up. This, it's like you read the other numbers and you're like, that is not me. And then you read the one that is you and you're like, whoa. Because I really do fear pain and I fear restriction. And I think part of why my books feel so confessional is because being a gay Christian kid in the South, I felt very bound. I felt very in a straitjacket and like behind a mask and afraid of what if people find out this, what if people find out that, my whole life will be ruined. And so like having a secret humming behind my skin really taught me to hate that and to like crave true freedom. And so I think that's why my books are so confessional and so like living out loud. And you want to hear something bad I did? I'll tell you about it right now. I cannot live with it in me. Like anything I've done, I'm going to tell you. Anything I believe, I'm going to tell you because I need to be free. And I think that colors my writing and actually is so much of my adult life is just like radical freedom and self-acceptance.
Yeah, definitely. I am an Enneagram 4, I think wing 3. And a lot of my friends are 7, so I definitely
sevens love 4s because 4s are so secure and serious. We love it.
Yes, and I love my enthusiast friends that are always excited for adventure and doing fun things. But I wanted to go back to what you talked about earlier, but your identity being both gay and Christian and growing up in that identity, I really connected with how you talked about in your book really needing an example of what it meant to live in that fullness of your identity as both of those things, and among other things that make us complex in our identity. But you really became that example that you needed based off of someone telling you, be your own example for yourself. So what was that like to become your own example and embrace that fullness of your identity?
Well, it was really, this is the power of reframing the narrative in your mind is we are completely motivated and the truth of our life is motivated by the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves. And so if you can tell yourself a different story, your whole life will change. And for me, I was always taught like, love God. I was raised very Christian and then really dove into it in my 20s, which I think was my attempt to overcome feeling like my sexuality made me bad. And so I was going to be the best Christian boy. Like, oh, you're going to tell me that something I can't control makes me bad, then I'm going to know the Bible better than all y'all. And I think I was talking to like a Christian, he ran a Christian camp in Northern California. And we were talking about this and I was like, I just feel like I've never seen like a serious Christian gay couple. Like, where are they? And well, I'll get to that in a second, and he said, he goes, well, you are interpreting the lack of seeing them as evidence that can't exist. But they certainly do exist. You just aren't finding them. And maybe in your circle, he was like, look at you. You're confident. You're bold. You have lots of friends. You're well loved. Like you are surrounded by love. Like you might be the one person prepared to really be the example you needed. What if you're the example you needed? Like walk in faith, not look for examples and then follow. It says walk in faith. Just go start walking. And if you're wrong, you'll get corrected. And that was so eye-opening to me. And just the concept of you might feel like an exile. Like it's very difficult to tell the difference between an exile and a pioneer. And it's like maybe you're the pioneer you've been waiting for. And I have a lot of complex thoughts on all this because I think one of the reasons it's difficult to find a serious Christian and gay couples is that once my interpretation of serious Christian was a certain posture around scripture and the Bible of my religion. And one of the things that I was raised is that like homosexuality is wrong. And so once you start pulling the thread on that sweater and you're like, well, I don't know. And then you really start learning and studying how the scripture was put together and just monastic interpolation of scripture and all these things, you start pulling, and it starts to unravel the very worldview that I was trying to reconcile. You start to leave that behind. I did, of just needing that certainty and that rigidity of that interpretation of my religion. I think one of the reasons why I couldn't find examples and I needed to be that pioneer moving in that direction was just that as you really seek the truth for yourself, it's sort of hard to stay in a rigid dogmatic faith,
Mhm.
because you're pursuing wisdom, and like, as opposed to a worldview that's handed down to you on a pamphlet.
Yeah. And I think with that worldview of religion and Christianity in particular, I connect with how I also grew up in a pretty rigid Christian community. So, but I really like in your book, you talk about challenging and deconstructing what your experience with religion, has been, and thinking about how religion for you had this kind of black and white thinking sense of like, this is good and that's bad. And so I really identify with like how you embrace living in that gray. But what does that look like for you as you kind of continue to challenge and deconstruct beliefs that you've had to live in that gray in terms of your spirituality?
It's great. It was obviously a long journey to let go of the certainty that I was told I had to have. I mean, so much of the worldview of the brand of evangelical Christianity that I was raised on was, the Bible is not a buffet. You better believe it the way we believe it, and trusting your heart is, you should trust God, not your heart. There's a verse in the Bible, the heart is deceitful above all things, that was used against me 1,000 times. It's not your way, it's God's way. You trying to do it your way is relativistic, it's selfish. You should lay down your life for God, blah, blah, blah. So it's like all these ideas of like promoting good things like service and selflessness but also like saying, okay, you're allowed to critically think and doubt, but not really, actually. You can doubt, we can lip service, but if you do, of course you can walk away, but that's like exactly what Satan wants, is you to like decide that your truth is better than God's truth, which all the while is just whatever the pastor's saying. And so but I had been sown so much fear of like, what if I'm wrong? Like, how can my little one life be more, how can I choose what's true when there's 2,000 years of church history and tradition saying one thing, and then my one little life and experience saying another? Like, why would I be so arrogant to think mine would supersede that? But then the journey of learning and studying, and you realize, oh, it's actually not as clear cut as you think. Like, first of all, there's 50,000 denominations of people arguing over what means what. And like, so people are like, people are using the Bible as a buffet all damn day. That's like what everybody's doing. They're just saying they're not, but they're just saying, my buffet isn't a buffet. It's a very rigid menu. And someone goes off and does something else. And so just in like my growth as a person and my like pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, I just realized, oh, certainty of belief is a childlike way of seeing the world. It's a way, as Father Richard Rohr would say, who's an amazing mystic teacher, he would say, you have to construct a worldview for a child so that they feel safe, because being a human and being born into this world is very confusing. So you need an adult to give you rigid rules. Okay, don't touch the stove, don't go outside after dark, do not pet a dog you don't know, whatever. And then as you get older, these rigid rules, you realize, oh, like there are rules, but sometimes you do touch a stove to like, when it's not on, you move the thing. Like, oh, sometimes you can go out after dark. It's like there are rules for a small childlike mind so that you can feel safe in a world that you just showed up in. But an adult sees the world and surveys and like expands, and those rules become much more complex. And that is deconstruction and basically finding your own way. And that's just the path of enlightenment. And then Father Richard Rohr would say, the final stage is reconstruction, where you take apart the rules that you were given. And that's where you're just like, screw you, mom and dad, I'm doing my own thing. You can't tell me what life is like. And then you come later to realize, and this is what he says is true enlightenment, that everything belongs, that you transcend and include. You understand that the rigidity of those rules were actually to make you feel safe, to find your way in the world. And then they all served a purpose. And so for me, I very much believe in transcend and include. Like the Christianity I was raised in, the faith, the religion, the structure, made me see the world as having an authorship and having meaning. And I love that. And I carry that with me. And I don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You know, I really see that the gray and the mystery and the miracle of just being alive, of being the universe. Like, let's say God and soul doesn't exist at all. I mean, I talk about this a lot in the book. Like, let's say we're just atoms bouncing around, right? Okay, how cool is that? Like, literal thoughtless matter organized accidentally in such a way where we are conscious. And so we are the universe waking up, looking at itself and saying, wow, you are so beautiful. Like, that is just as cool as any other idea. That is so cool. And so that sense of wonder is just the posture that I want to live with in my life. And it feels great.
Yeah, I love that. The book has really ignited a lot of new thoughts, about faith for me, and even thinking about like my family's origins. I think in the book you talked about like, do you know who your great grandparents are and their names and what did they do? And it has really just, sparked this flurry of thought for me, and has really, I think, brought me to a place of connection too with others about all of these different elements of life that you touch on. But I know we're almost at time, and we'll open up for audience questions. But a couple more questions I have for you. So I guess, what do you really hope is the legacy and like the impact that you want to leave on people, right now in the present, but also in the future?
Side note, when you look at me on the screen, are you in the left square or the right square? Or right
I'm in the left square.
Okay, do you see the 3 little mirrors behind you? It makes me look like a thought bubble that you're having. Do you see that? It's
my gosh, yeah.
I feel like you're just like talking
So
to your friend. Legacy. See, as an Enneagram 7, like our motto is like, I'm here for a fun time, not a long time. So it's like, I'm here to have fun. And so like a concept of like, will people know my name when I'm gone? Will there be statues of me? Like, I don't care. I'm gone. Like, I'm asleep in the ground. Worms are eating my face. I'm asleep. So I hope I've had a positive impact on somebody's life, but like, I want to feel it now. And so that's what's so cool about writing and getting to engage with people and feel like I know myself better through the process, and people feeling like they know themselves better. I just want people to thrive in this life. And for me, the being confused about who I am and what I want puts this like nasty film over my life, and I can't enjoy the day because I'm like, who am I? I have imposter syndrome. I shouldn't be here. Why do people love me? If they really knew me, they wouldn't love me. And it like poisons everything when you could just be loving life, feeling loved. And when you feel sincerely loved, you can sincerely love others. And that's just such an abundant life. And so I hope that my books give people that sense of self-understanding so that they can love themselves as they should, and then ultimately love others out of that abundance. That's like what I hope I exist for. I hope that's how I'm useful.
Yeah. I think definitely how you described your legacy. I think even for me personally, I really admire just like your honesty and your wisdom, and it has helped me to connect with friends and family, and even knowing myself better. But I definitely want to get to some of the questions that we have from the audience. I think we have 9 questions.
Oh, wow. Thank y'all.
Yeah. So the first question from Jonathan. So how did you settle on the 8 themes? Were there other themes that you considered exploring or incorporating in the book?
Thank you for the question, Jonathan. Okay, my brain's frying at 1,000. Okay, when you like look at your phone and it's been tracking health data all day and you're like, whoa, I did this many steps or whatever. I'm like waiting, and maybe Google can invent this. I don't know about privacy concerns, but I'm waiting for like the year. You know how Spotify does a year in review? I want the year in review to be like all these machines that are listening to us. I want it to tell me how many times I said the F word in the year 2020, how many times, like, I want it to like give me these amazing stats of things I'm doing unconsciously that I don't realize. Like I say 4,222 times a day or whatever it is. I think that'd be so cool to see those stats. And so when I had this idea, it was originally going to be called the 7 subjects, just because I love the number 7, and it's like it's got a lot of history and holiness and structure. And so I went back over 5 years of my writing, mostly on Instagram and blogs and magazines, and I just kind of I would read through my favorite things or things that felt like epiphanies to me, and I would drag them into like categories. I'd be like, oh, this seems to be about family. Okay. This seems to be about friendship. Oh, And I just went through 5 years of writing and found that I tended to talk about 8 things the most. So it was this like unconscious algorithm of what I seem to care about and worry about and think about. And so what's cool is I didn't choose the 8 themes. I just kind of naturally worried about them and wrote about them. And so I found that to be very cool, as those things bubbled up as just an organic thing in my mind. And so that's where they came from.
Very cool. Let's see what our next question is. So from Laura, is there anything that you have rethought since writing the book or in talking about the book that has shifted your perspective?
You know, I actually, there were some sections in the book, because I am so much of a understander, and like there are 2 sides to every coin. Everyone has a motivation and everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story. And so calm, measured conversation is better than shouting at each other, blah, blah, blah. And that's the note I play in the orchestra of life, is like, okay, let's just breathe and think about this. But over the summer with Black Lives Matter and just like the conversations around anti-racism and racial justice, I became such a student of understanding the power of anger and the power of aggression, and how it's an important immune response for a society. Like sometimes having a nice conversation over tea isn't going to get you where you need to go. Sometimes you're in so much pain as a society and as a community that you need to rage against the machine a little bit. And that is something that's really hard for me to do, because that's not my nature. I think waking up into a world that wasn't made for me as a gay man in the South, there are avenues you can go. You can rage against the machine, or you can assimilate and figure out how it works and try to change it from the inside. And when I was trying to figure out how I'm going to fit into this life, I chose assimilation and working it out from the inside. But that isn't what everyone chooses. And some people can't make that choice by nature or whatever it is. And so that's been something that was very humbling for me to like process. And I'm still processing just the role and the meaning of anger.
Yeah. Let's see what our next one is. So from Nicholas, what's on top of your travel list once the pandemic is over? Any places from book 1?
So book 1, I cycled across South America, Latin America, Central America, and cycling is a very slow thing. And it was really torturous to some degree, because I'd be biking through a small town and someone would say, oh, 40 minutes up this dirt road is the most amazing hot spring. And I'm like, well, on a bicycle on a dirt road, that's a 40-mile, that's a day's trip. So that's 2 days where there's no town. I'm like, I can't go. I have to stay on the highway. And so there's a lot of things that I wasn't able to see and do. So I would love to retrace some of my steps on a motorcycle, to where I could like go on those little jaunts and see what the locals love. Also, my friend Margie always says the best trip you ever take is the second time you go somewhere you loved, because the first time is wonder, first time. Second time, you're a little more comfortable, but it's still new. But you can kind of be like, oh, this is my favorite cafe in Paris or whatever. You just like, you're a little more comfortable. And so I would love to go back to Argentina and Chile and Bolivia and all these amazing places that I loved for a second time. I was supposed to go December because a total eclipse crossed over Patagonia. Can you believe it? I booked my ticket.
Wow.
Ready. I thought this GD pandemic would be over, and it was not. And so, alas, I couldn't go. But, you know, the longer the waiting, the sweeter the kiss. So once I get to go back, it will be glorious.
Yeah. Also, I think you mentioned maybe in your book or somewhere else I read, but you want to go on a trip with your mom and kind of discover these places with her. Would that be a place that you'd want to return to with her?
Well, yes. Traveling with my mom is so fun. She's Barb, and she is so hilarious. I'm actually right now pitching to my publisher. I think I want my next book to be journeying with her and retracing her steps when she walked across America, because, you know, she's 73. Like, she's in that quote unquote most risky population of COVID-19. I mean, even though she's healthy as an ox, but like, there's just, I've a lot of thoughts around when your parents are in their 70s and mortality, and like, it's just a very complex thing to process. And she is so articulate and also so different than me, politically opposite, like diehard Jesus lover, all these things. And so I just think it'd be really interesting, especially in this political moment, to really get to know how she works and how her entire generation works. And it's just so fun to travel with her. And so, yeah, I'm excited to hit the road with her ASAP. I really want to go to New Zealand. I've never been to Japan. I want to go to Madagascar. I mean, the 2021, well, fall 2021/2022, anyone invites me anywhere, I'm saying yes. Vaccine in my bloodstream, let's party.
Yes. I'm so excited for that. Can't wait to travel again. All right, let's see. So from Stephen, what's your process for writing and editing? As the son of an author who also writes about journeying, how have you developed your own flavor that you know is true to you?
Well, for me, I never really read my parents' books until I was much, much older, just because it was a different, I don't know, maybe everyone's like that. Like, you just don't really see your parents. You don't really care what they do. They're like your parents. And it wasn't until much later, and I'd already developed a voice as a writer, that I went back and started reading their words, which was so cool to like see your parents' minds when they're your age, writing about experiences they're taking in the America of Vietnam and the Vietnam War. And it was really interesting. But my writing voice is simply the way that I talk. I write how I talk because I'm extroverted and I just need to like get my thoughts out. And I find that the best reading, when I enjoy reading the most, when the words flow into my mind and I'm not aware that I'm reading. It's just like somehow I'm getting thoughts implanted into my mind. It's like a flow. And that, to me, is like when a writer can really flow into my mind, it's a success. And so I try to write in a way that feels like it's flowing in, but with just a little more weight to make it feel a little poetic, or just a little, give it some gravity. And I haven't tried to have a writing voice. I just think I've been told I have one. And I think it's probably just because it's the way that I speak, and everyone speaks differently.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question too. Do you have like a process or a place where you're just able to write, and it's just maybe your special place, or, you know, just this time where you can get into a flow of writing?
It's really, I haven't written much in the pandemic because I finished this book in February of 2022, turned it in. So it's funny because right after I turned it in and I was about to be free, I could go travel the world. Yoink. But normally I love going to the coffee shop or the cafe and sitting there for all day. I sit there, I order multiple meals, I got my headphones in, and I love the like buzz of other people. It
Hmm.
makes me awake, and it's just like fun to like see. I don't know. There's something. If I'm just like, if I had like a cabin in my backyard, a writer's cabin, I don't think I would get much done in there because I'd be lonely. And
Yeah.
and when I'm alone, I get tired and I want to nap. So I just like being at the cafe. So
Yeah. True extrovert.
yeah, yeah,
Getting the buzz of people
I
around.
get my energy from others.
All right. Our next question from Melissa. I loved book one, and seeing an Instagram post from you brings joy to my day. Thank you for your words. I also find that campfire spark unique conversations. What's the best campfire conversation that you've had?
Well, this one is kind of funny and strange, but there's this group of guys that I've been camping with for years, and they're all straight guys, but me, I'm the gay guy, and they're all like married, and this is what came to mind. Somehow we were having some drinks, we're around the fire, and they just started asking me questions about like what gay people do and what the words mean, and they just didn't know what these words meant, and it was we were sobbing laughing because just like educating all these bros about gay terms was just I felt like an ambassador. It was in there. It was so funny and just yeah. So that's what comes to mind.
See, next question from Mason. In a short video I saw about your cycling trip, you said that you set out to try and rewire your brain to be more joyful and aligned with your purpose. Do you think you succeeded?
Great question, Mason. Absolutely. I think the goal was, as you get older, time slips through your hands. It seems to speed up. And I did a lot of research trying to figure out how do you slow it down?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the research tends to believe that time slows down, not just because you're a kid, but actually it has everything to do with identity formation. So time moves slow when you really feel like you're finding who you are because your brain is so alert with like, oh, I am this type of person. I am that type of person. And so they find that time is very slow when you're young and adolescent. And then once when you're in a groove and you start to build your habits and you've decided who you are, it starts to really speed up. And they find the second time moves the slowest is a midlife crisis. When you
Wow.
get that divorce or you have an affair or whatever it is all of a sudden you're relitigating who am I? And just time slows down. And so I just want to be in a posture of ever asking who am I? Always peeling back a new layer. And it really works. I feel like I'm 1,000 years old. I really do. And that's great.
So much wisdom to share. In your book, I'm just like, wow, he knows everything, or so much about life. I just want to absorb it all.
Oh my God. Well, I ask a lot of questions, that's for sure.
Yeah. Our next question from Laura. Which chapter did you struggle most to write and why?
Well, it's funny. Like, family was the scariest to write because it was basically confession to my brother and writing about my mom. And like, whenever you write nonfictions and memoir, you generally write about, of course, you write about real people that you know. And sometimes you're writing about hard things. And so those are real people who are going to read that and be like, bro, you got this all wrong, or how dare you say that, or you made me look like this or that. It's very hard. And so that is stressful. I always think of, there's this, what's his name? Jack Kerouac wrote this book called Big Sur. And I was reading it. In the intro, it was this professor, and he was writing about, and I'll never forget it. He was describing Jack Kerouac's style of writing. And he goes, you'll notice Jack Kerouac writes about a lot of real people all the time. And he's writing about them doing pretty wild things, drugs, benders, all these things. And yet you'll notice he never has a mean word to say about anybody. because you can feel from his posture about these interesting people, he isn't mean. He's just describing them. You can tell he loves them. And I really took that to heart because I feel that way about the people, my family, about the people I write about is they can do some pretty crazy things, but I love them and I love their eccentricity and I love even the things that they do that hurt me. I'm not mad. I'm just processing it. And
Yeah.
so that was hard to write. Also, the chapter on soul was hard to write just because I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
It was grasping at the ethereal. And so that was the chapter that felt the least concrete, which it probably should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we are almost at time, so we'll take one more question.
This is my
So from Nicholas, how did you meet Adele and become friends? Such a fun
yeah. She lives next door to one of my other best friends. Literally, they share a wall. And I was over there, and this was in 2018, 17 or 18, I forget. I think 18. And I was over there for brunch, and I think she heard us talking, and she showed up with a bottle of rosé, and she was like, I heard voices and I'm lonely. And she had just moved to LA, and we just started talking about, I remember we started talking about our grandparents and got a little morning buzz, and it was just she was just so fun and funny. And what I didn't realize is that she had just moved to LA and had no friends and is so famous that she doesn't meet new people. She has a very insulated life. And so just because I knew her neighbor and her only friend in LA, it was almost like a voucher for my legitimacy as like not a crazy. And I mean, it takes a minute to get over the fact that she's like your favorite singer, but then once she's so personable and normal, you forget very quickly. And then over time we hung out, and interestingly, after we had a great hang, she then read my book, and she had just turned 30 and was like, what is my life? Like, I don't know who I am. I've been famous since I was 19. And am I like stuck in my childhood brain because I've been in like freak out mode of the public eye? And so she read To Shake the Sleeping Self about turning 30, about choosing the life that you want or whatever. And so it was this kind of funny exchange because I knew who she was because she's famous. And then she all of a sudden read 300 pages of my whole life story. So we kind of met in the middle and we're like, can we be friends? And she would like call me to discuss the book. It was very cool. And then we just fell in love.
I love that. What a great friendship.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing more about your story. I'm really excited to see what's next for you. And of course, continuing to connect with your words. Thank you. This has been such a pleasure.
Erica, I've had the best time, and thank you for having me and letting me live in your thought bubble.
Yes, I love that.
I'm just so grateful, and hopefully I get to do this in person sometime.
Yes,
next book.
Anytime. Any Google office.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.